Okay, great. Hey everyone, thanks for that welcome. I hope that you can hear me all okay. Welcome to a talk that I wrote very quickly after being invited to this event about changing your mind. I'm by no means an expert, but I've been changing my mind a lot lately, and I thought I'd do some talking about it and kind of share some of my really awkward moments, some of my enlightening moments, and hopefully help you all come to a sort of sense of peace around the idea of changing your mind. If previously, like me, the thought of changing your mind, like changing yeses into nos or even nos into yeses, has left you terrified or just incredibly avoidant of those situations. So hopefully there'll be some useful stuff for you here. Um, this is who I am. I thought I'd intro myself. I'm Errol. It's lovely to meet you all. My pronouns are they, them. I've been in the digital product design and UX space for around 12 years, probably a little bit longer now. And I've been working in the humanitarian third sector charity work and NGO work for about 9 years now, which is super stressful, also super exciting. Would love to talk more about that, but this is not what this talk is about. I've been doing lots of stuff within the open source space for 5 years, particularly in the design side of things. And I've also been researching how designers get involved in open source software that has humanitarian and human rights focus. If you're interested in those things, you can always message me. Not what we're here to talk about today. I call myself a human rights centered designer, which is a fun little title. Again, not what we're here to talk about today, but always happy to talk about that as a term. So let's get into it. Okay. I'd like you to take a few moments, and I'm going to be quiet. Have a think about when and why did you last say yes to something that was asked of you? It doesn't have to be a big ask. It doesn't have to be something really, really super important. It could be something quite small that you were asked to do. But I'd like you to have a think about the last time that you said yes to something that was asked of you. You can take a moment to write it down as well if you want to. We're going to be coming back to that. I'm going to do a quick story before we come back to the last time that you said yes to something. So the most recent time that I've changed my mind was quite a big one for me. I had agreed to do an unpaid conference talk. Unpaid is important always to say because of the context of changing my mind here. But I'd spoke at this conference previously, so I felt reasonably familiar with it. I was doing some talking about something that I'd never spoken about before, but it wasn't necessarily a subject that I'd initiated. It was a subject that the conference organizers really wanted me to talk about. But it wasn't a general topic that I could do research about. It was one that was really specific to the inner workings of some of the conference work. And alongside being asked to do this talk at this conference, a colleague had also been asked to do another talk, completely separate talk at the same conference. So as I was being asked to do this particular talk that they wanted me to do, about the inner workings of the conference, I knew I had some support. And I also really wanted to support my colleague. They were talking in front of a big crowd for one of the first times in a really long time, as many of us perhaps are more recently. And they were nervous, so I wanted to support them. And I couldn't really think of a good reason to say no. Even though I kind of wanted to at the time, I was a little bit uncomfortable about my decision-making process. But I could think of reasons to say yes, and I could think of reasons to say yes, but. And the but included asking the organizers to send me what they wanted covered in the talk and what they expected of me, some images and content and guidance that I wanted to be ongoing as I developed this talk. And fast forward to about a month away from the conference, and I actually hadn't got the things that I'd asked for in the yes but, the things that I'd requested in order to have said the yes. And I hadn't chased them because I was busy working, and I was actually quite unsure about how much I could push them, on what I needed. And I was feeling generally pretty awful about the whole thing, mostly about being in front of many, many tens of people, talking about a subject that I didn't have the preparation or the materials for because they were not openly accessible for me to find. And I was beginning to dread the preparation as well as the ever approaching event. But I'd said yes. I couldn't let them down, could I? that's what it means. It means when you say yes, that's a yes, and you carry through with it. Um, but I ended up doing something both terrifying and brave for me. I changed my mind. I let them know I could no longer do the talk, and that was that. And everything was okay. So, going back to the last time that you said yes, whether it was a big thing or a small thing or anywhere in between, have a think about, was the yes easy or difficult? And what was involved in you choosing the yes? And what would it feel like to change your mind on that yes? To change it into a yes, but, or perhaps even a no? You can take some time to think about your answers to the yes that you thought of previously. You can write them down, or you can take a screenshot of these questions. But I'd really like more people, and I'd like to explore the idea that you can interrogate why you're saying yeses. And you can also allow those interrogations and those explorations of why you want to say yes, or whether you want to say yes, to inform whether or not you need to change your mind or want to change your mind. So I have a lot of things that I often think about when I say yes. There's a lot of things that I think are just universal truths about whether when I say yes to something, and I'm like, I don't know if there will be another opportunity like this one, so I should say yes, right? And maybe something bad would happen. I don't know what the bad is, but maybe it would happen if I said no. So maybe I should, just be saying yes. And someone else really, really wants you to say yes. Sometimes you can kind of tell that they really want you to say yes, and it's really, really hard to communicate what you want in that situation. And also, if you don't say yes, you might be letting someone down, or you might be labeled as unreliable or something similar. But a lot of these things are things that I'm nervous about and afraid of when I think about what it is to say yes and change my mind, or to say no. When faced with a yes or a no or a maybe ask, I recommend, and I have practiced this a lot more, um, about giving yourself time. So you don't need to be afraid about giving yourself time or asking for time. And it's really okay, and it should be a standard, in fact, that we take time to consider our choices, as well as making it more acceptable to change our minds when we've made a decision at one point in time, and maybe the information changed. Maybe it's not, but changing our mind as well as asking for time should be completely acceptable and should be the standard, really. So next time you're asked something, and it's a yes no or a yes but or a maybe, even if you're pretty certain of the answer at that given time, have a practice about what it might be, what it might feel like to give yourself more time and to ask for more time, and to spend some time thinking about some of the earlier questions about why you're saying yes, what it might feel like to say no, and what are the criteria involved in saying that yes. And make it really clear. You can write these things down, or you can just take time to explore them. But I really want us to consider how we're answering our requests and asks, and considering what it might be like to change our mind if we needed to. So a question that I ask myself periodically now around these kinds of requests is that, do I have enough support to carry through with this yes? And do I have everything that I need for this yes? And I think the tricky thing here is making sure that you keep asking yourself these questions so that you can know whether you want to change your mind and whether you need to communicate that at any point. So it's not just about saying the yes when it's first asked. It's about, or saying the answer to how you want to answer something at the first point of when you're asked something. But it's about periodically checking in with yourself and saying, do I have enough support to carry through with this? Yes or no. And do I have everything that I need for this answer? I'm a really big fan of borrowing templates from other industries and other spaces, and using them to help with things like in my professional tech career. This template is from Negotiating and Sharing different things that you're interested in trying in intimate relationships and partnered relationships. And it's something called a will, won't, want list. If you have a look at will, won't, want templates on the internet, you're likely to get lots of things to do with sex education and relationship education. So don't be afraid if you do a search that you'll get some results like that. But I've adapted this exercise to help me when I want to try and decide how I want to answer a request and whether or not I need to change my mind at any point. So this practice really helps me consistently assess and physically move where I want to spend energy and whether saying a yes is right at that moment or whether I might be ready to change my mind by physically moving something. And just on the screen at the moment is a three-columned chart with want, will, won't. You can do it in any kind of configuration that you want. And it has ideals, ambitions, and preferences in want. It has things that you'll try and common ground in will, and hard limits and no way in won't. And the way that I use this is I might put something like want to do more conference talks. So when I'm asked to do conference talks, I'll look over at my will, won't, want chart and I'll say, oh, I've got conference talks in my want chart, or I've got it in my won't chart. That helps me feel more confident in the answer that I want. But it also prompts me to say, is that still in the column that it should be at the moment? So is it still accurate to how I feel about how I want to answer that request? And do I need to change my mind? And again, like the questions, I periodically check in with this chart and make sure that things are where I feel comfortable that they are, and they help inform whether I need to change my mind and communicate changing my mind at any point. So the scary kind of potentially scary conversation part. So, okay, so moving into the part where you have changed your mind and you need to communicate it. And I haven't said it explicitly yet, I don't think, but I hope it's implicit with what I've been talking about. But changing your mind is very much okay. I do think that the idea of changing our minds is really got a bad reputation, that for all of the reasons that I kind of covered earlier, like we might be labeled as a certain type of way, we might not get opportunities, but changing your mind is totally okay. It's really healthy. In fact, it allows you to keep checking in with yourself and understand how you want to approach different things in your life, career, and otherwise. So it's totally okay, both in a personal capacity and a professional capacity, where it's really discouraged, I think, a lot of the time in the professional capacity. But if you go into these conversations not believing you deserve to change your mind, then it's likely to be a lot harder than it needs to be. But before you go into the conversation where you have changed your mind, I find it's really useful to consider how much detail and information you're comfortable sharing at what points during the conversation. Does written work better for you than spoken? And do you want direct responses, and in what time frame? So these are some of the things that I found that really helped me when I've needed to change my mind and communicate changing my mind about a particular decision. So we've talked a lot about turning yeses into nos and not nos into yeses when you change your mind. So a lot of the same questions and a lot of the same approaches still matter and can still be useful and relevant. And how you set expectations for the ask and the time period for the yes, no, or maybe is really important within a no. So I have used these in the past around turning no's into yeses, which are conversation structures like, I need specific amount of time to consider my answer to this offer or request. Can I ask whether, if I say no or unsure right now, what is the time limit? What would the time limit be if I say no now? Can I change my mind? And it really can be as dare I say, simple as that, as asking whether changing your mind is a viable option. There's also the template which is around, I can't say yes to this unless I get X, Y, or Z support or resources. And I don't think I will be likely changing my yes into, if I don't get those things, I won't be changing my yes into a no. I will be likely changing my yes into a no apology. So if you don't get certain things, you'll be changing the yes into a no. So this is about helping people when you're communicating with them around an answer to a request, that this is open communication, it's clear communication, in that changing your mind is a valid option. It's an option that will be happening if certain criteria are not met. And again, it can seem a little bit odd and a little bit scary, but they really do help the overall clarity of where you're at the point in the decision, which is generally best for everyone involved if you're being open, honest, and clear with whether or not you'll change your mind and what criteria are involved in changing your mind. As I come up to my 15 minutes time, I wanted to spend some time noting something towards people, managers, or people that support and mentor other people in their workplace or in their industries. So as a person manager myself, as somebody that mentors staff in an official capacity, I want to really make sure that my junior and mid-level teammates that I help to manage are encouraged to think and consider and probe the request and ask before they say yes and no. Just because somebody is perceived as hierarchically, in a less responsible role, or however we want to categorize like levels of hierarchy and management within organizations, people should still be able to consider how they're saying yes or no and be able to change their mind. So I make it consistently clear with every yes, no, maybe situation that I talk to my direct reports with, that they can change their mind and that is okay. I don't just say this once, I repeat this every single time that I have a request. Hey, we've got some work come in. Would you like to work on this project, or would you like to work on this project? Hey, it's okay to change your mind if you say yes or if you say no to this. There are ways in which we can make that work. Even managers, even when it's inconvenient for you, there is something so powerful about being able to allow your direct reports and the people that you work with change their mind, given more information, given different information, given time, given whatever that they need in order to make a more considered yes, no, or yes, but answer. So make sure that you leave space for team members to change their minds. So a little bit of story just to round out my time on. I did this recently working one-on-one with a direct report where they really weren't sure whether they wanted to do a certain kind of design work anymore. In the design world, there's lots of different kinds of functions that you can do. You can do user research or UI or lots of different things. And they were really unsure whether there was this particular skill that they'd been doing lots of recently. They didn't know whether they actually enjoyed it. They didn't know if they wanted to progress it. But because of where they were, they sort of felt like they should say yes to projects that included that kind of work because they had done them previously. There'd been no indication that they didn't enjoy them. So they felt really uncomfortable being unsure about whether they wanted to continue to take on those kinds of projects with that kind of skill involved. So at that point, I offered the chance for them to stop and ask these questions like, why are you saying yes? What are the criteria involved when you are saying yes? What are the feelings? What would it feel like to say no? What would it feel like to say yes and then change your mind? And it really was that easy. They spent the time thinking about why they wanted to say yes, what it would feel like to say no, and what they actually needed in order to feel really happy, fulfilled, and that they were progressing skills. And they knew that the opportunity wasn't closed to them forever, that it wasn't a no that wouldn't be able to be changed into a yes should they decide at a future point that they wanted to change their mind. So with that, I've gone a little bit over my time. I'd like to say thank you. There are some various places you can find me on the internet, on GitHub, for my PhD research. You can find me at my github.io webpage there. So that's erroldoesdesign.github.io. And you can also find other talks that I've done on my notice page, noti.st/errolfox. Thanks for listening, everyone, and hope that you feel a little bit more comfortable about changing your mind in the future, should you need to.